40 seconds.
Gee, it's like I'm on real TV or radio or something. 30 seconds to air. 15 seconds to air.
Cue the mics.
Cue the mics.
Vote mic. Fade to black. Or fade to black. Roll fade. Actually, roll fade.
Yeah, but I don't hear that. Like basically my
Don't cue you.
right, yeah, that's the thing, because your monitor on TV always goes silent 15 seconds before you go live, so that you know that when you stop hearing the director panicking, that okay, I should probably quit picking my nose and start smiling.
Okay, Nick, you're actually live.
Did that last comment get caught?
It might have.
Edit it out in post-production.
Hi everybody, I'm Nick Farr. I am the treasurer. I'm the treasurer of the Hacker Foundation, and I also have an MBA from Grand Valley State University. And I'm here to talk about hacking your finances. Most of what I'm talking about today is actually just plain common sense, with a little bit of special tweaks and insider stuff as far as how to make financial institutions work for you as opposed to the other way around. Also, if you are unclear on what a specific term means, just yell out. Like, what is a revolving credit account? And I'll say, a revolving credit account is a credit account issued as credit cards, store credit, things where you buy and sell, not like a mortgage. Not like a mortgage, which is something that you agree upon that has a fixed thing. Like store credit accounts like from vendors, credit cards. There are a couple other types of revolving credit accounts that I'm forgetting. But if there's a term like that out there, just yell out what is X, and I'll try to hit that for you. Could we have security remove Shardy over here? Just a couple of quick disclaimers. I am not a CPA. I am not an attorney. A speech at a HackerCon is not a substitute for professional advice. And just while we're on the subject, nothing except professional advice is ever a substitute for professional advice. If you can't sue the person for giving you bad advice, then it's not professional advice. Actually, let me take that back. If you can't single-handedly ruin a person's livelihood for giving you bad advice, then it's not professional advice. All right, I promised you in the program that I'd give you the 10 reasons why hackers are bad with their money. Number 1, they don't keep track of their spending. Number 2, they don't have a budget or a financial plan. 3, they don't save or invest wisely. 4, they buy things they don't need and or can't afford. 5, they use bad credit instruments. 6, they keep their credit cards and revolving credit accounts at or near their limits. 7, they don't understand their benefits, compensation, or insurance packages. 8, they charge or demand too little for their services. 9, they don't seek out adequate professional tax and financial planning advice, and in turn end up paying too much in taxes. And 10, they use money as a substitute for personal needs. So, how do you fix this? Well, it actually directly translates. 10 ways for hackers to make better use of their money. 1, keep track of your expenses. 2, make a budget and a financial plan. 3, save money and invest wisely. 4, carefully plan, research, and examine large purchases. 5, make lenders compete for your business. Make them work for you, don't work for them. 6, pay off your credit balances to reasonable levels. 7, know what your benefits package is. Know about your compensation. Know what you're getting paid, what's getting taken out. Know about payroll deductions. And know about the kinds of insurance that are available for you in your state, from your company, from the federal government. 8, get paid what you deserve. 9, seek out adequate professional tax and financial planning advice. And 10, grow up. You'd be surprised how many times I have to say this to professionals in the field. First one, keep track of your spending. There are 2 good open source packages with a long track record out there. They both have their advantages and disadvantages. First one, GNU Cache. GNU Cache is what I use to track my data because the financial institutions that I do business with port their data in ways that GNU Cache is better at handling. But GNU Cache actually has a long project history of being very bad at running the budgeting function. Also, it's a little bit too complicated. It uses debits and credits and expects the user to know what debits, credits, accounts are, things like that. If you don't understand GNU Cache and how it works, don't use it. The other open source alternative that's a major package out there is KMyMoney. KMyMoney, it's more KDE based. It's not good at pulling data from financial institutions. It requires a lot of user intervention, scripting, things like that to process the files that financial institutions push out there. Even if you're good at programming, even if you're good at scripting, even if you're good at doing that, hackers are not good at finances. They're not good at understanding data that financial institutions push out there. If it doesn't come out easily, don't use it because you're going to screw it up. Also, KMyMoney is simple. It's easy. If you can balance a checkbook, you can use KMyMoney. It uses debits and credits in the background, but it doesn't do that. It doesn't do that in user space as much as GNU Cache does it. And also, if you use KDE, you should probably use it. Don't try to use GNU Cache in KDE. Don't try to use KMyMoney in GNOME unless you know what you're doing. If these two options sound unreasonable for you, just do it in a spreadsheet. OpenOffice Calc works just like Excel. It's great if your bank exports direct spreadsheet files, comma-separated values, Excel files. It works with them pretty perfectly unless you're doing more advanced formulas, Visual Basic, that sort of thing. It's more customizable. Generally, you're building your own spreadsheet. There are really good templates out there that you can find off the web. Do research, figure out something that works well for you. The only thing is, if you can't balance your checkbook, you don't know how to write formulas in Excel or OpenOffice, don't use it. Go with one of the other two. But everybody who's attending this con should at least be able to know how to write formulas in a spreadsheet package or know someone who knows how to write formulas in a spreadsheet package. 2, make a budget and a financial plan. They used to actually teach this in high schools. I don't know why they don't do this anymore, and I suspect it's a corporate conspiracy. You'd be surprised how many people don't have a budget. They don't know how much they're supposed to spend on food every month. They don't know how much they're supposed to spend on gas every month. They don't know when they're eating out too much. They don't know when they're spending too much on gas, which is actually a really good way at figuring out if there's something wrong with your car. If your mileage suddenly takes a spike, that means you should probably go take it to a mechanic. If you were keeping track of that in your budget, you'd know that. But most people in this room, or not in this, I'm not going to say anything about people in this room, but most hackers who I've worked with on their finances, okay, I take that back. All hackers who I've worked with in their finances don't have a budget. And if they have a budget, I don't know about it or they're not using it effectively. You really have to use the budget to figure out where your money is going and where you'd rather have your money go instead. If you don't have a budget, pick one of the packages I showed you in the first step, track your expenses, put them into different categories and things like that, and at the end of a month, figure out where your money is going. You will always be shocked. It doesn't matter how methodical a person you are. If you're not using these tools, you really don't know where your money is going. A lot of things that hackers do that they really don't need to do, probably the number one thing that really shocks people is eating out. Eating out more than twice a week means you're spending more money than you need to on food. That's basically it. If you don't know how to cook, find someone who can teach you how to cook. If you don't want to find someone to teach you how to cook, buy those prepackaged meals that are in the frozen food aisle at your local supermarket. If you're going out to eat more than twice a week, and that includes lunch, if you're going out to eat more than twice a week and you don't have to for a legitimate business purpose, i.e. if you can't write off the meal on your taxes, you don't need to be going out to eat for lunch. Second thing, convenience stores. Even hackers with access to a car or easy public transit to a big grocery store are still going to go to a convenience store. I challenge anybody in this room to find any item in a convenience store except for maybe for alcoholic beverages, to find any item in a convenience store that is less than what you can buy it for in a grocery store. The other thing about doing your grocery shopping once a week as opposed to making 3 or 4 trips a week to a convenience store, you save on gas. In the end, you save on time. You're planning ahead, and you're saving money. Another thing, Hackers love to use ATM machines. They rarely keep more than $40 in cash on them at any time. They're always going to the ATM, swiping it in, getting $40 in cash, and paying a $2 transaction fee. That's a lot. If you go to an ATM that's not at your bank or in your network, more than in emergencies, like when you're in Cleveland and your bank just doesn't exist in Ohio and you have to go somewhere else and you need cash and you don't like to carry a lot of cash on you, then you're paying too much. Banks love that. There's a reason that those little tiny ATMs that you plug into a phone line have proliferated is because those are gigantic profit centers for people, for lending institutions. Also, and I try to use this to convince people who aren't convinced of my first point when they figure out that they're spending $20 a month just on ATM fees, is that a lot of those ATMs are very easily hackable. If it's not embedded into a wall in a bank, it's probably very easily hackable by at least 5 or 6 different people who are sitting in this room. Also, another thing, and this I get a little bit of an argument about, a lot of people they grew up buying brand name stuff, and they just continue and they go out there and they buy brand name stuff. For 90% of the stuff out there, the brand name, whatever it is basically the identical thing to the generic. This applies to food. It applies especially to medical products. If there's a generic option available, if there's a store brand, if it's less, buy the generic, buy the store brand. Another thing, know what your limits are. If your credit cards are always maxed out, you don't know how to use credit cards, pay them off, never use a credit card. There's no reason that, even for hotels and renting cars and different things like that, if you're responsible with your money, you don't need to use a credit card. A debit card works exactly the same way. And honestly, you should probably have enough in your savings account to cover whatever that temporary hold is. And if it's really a problem, you can usually call your bank and say, hey, this rental car hold has been on my account, reducing my available balance for 6 months. Can you remove it? Call the bank. If there's ever a question, call the bank. They work for you. If your bank charges you for you to talk to them, go to a different bank. I've banked with a credit union for 12 years, and it's great. There's always a credit union in the United States that I can use that's a local ATM that I don't have to pay fees on. Yeah, I have to go out there and look for a little bit, but honestly, it's never more than $2 in gas. It's never more than a $2 public transit ride away. Another thing, if you're making a pretty decent living, you probably should go out there and find a certified financial planner to help you work out on what your financial goals are. Everybody is different. Everybody has different needs. You should be working with a professional unless you're making less than $20,000 a year. Third thing, save money and invest wisely. The general rule of thumb is to put at least 10% of what you make in your check and just automatically put it into savings or investments. It's usually better to save for large purchases that you don't absolutely need to buy now for some legitimate business reason or some personal emergency. If you plan ahead of time, you don't have to pay whatever interest it is you would if you just threw it on your credit card and paid it off over time. Also, don't be a day trader. Just don't try it. Unless you have over $100,000 in your investment account, attempting to be a day trader, anything you make will either be eaten up in taxes or transaction fees. That's always the way it works. Also, don't invest on your own unless you're getting more than 12% annually. If you're not making that, if you're getting 8% or consistently taking a loss, you don't know how to invest, find a professional who does. That's a pretty basic rule of thumb. Also, whenever you're investing, think long term. Don't buy into companies or investments that you're not 99% sure will be around by the time it's time for you to retire. It's always better to invest in long term unless you have money that you just like to play with. Researching and planning your big purchases. Hackers like to buy expensive cars, boats, equipment, big ticket items. The only things you absolutely need are food, clothing, and shelter. Everything else is negotiable. You don't need to replace your gaming system or laptop every 6 months. You don't. There's no legitimate reason to be spending more than $4,000 on computer equipment in a given year. Also, by figuring out what you need to buy, by figuring out what a big purchase will cost you over time, you have a better sense of what you really need and what you don't need. Always, when you're considering making a large purchase, figure out what that purchase costs you, what that purchase is going to cost you by paying for it in credit, how long you plan to use that purchase. Divide that all, it should be able to tell you what that purchase will cost you every single day. If you're paying more than $10 a day to have a computer, you're probably buying too many computers. Another good strategy, especially in big ticket items like this, don't buy the newest, latest bleeding edge model. Buy the next best one the day the newer model comes out. You will always save money, and there's very, very rarely any reason that you're going to need the next biggest thing on the bleeding edge. Also, take care of your stuff. Get oil changes every 2,000 miles. Have your car looked at by a mechanic. Do the things that your lease, if you lease a car, takes care of. Don't kick your computer. Buy a case for your laptop. If you can't handle a laptop, buy a tough book that doesn't break. Hackers don't like to take care, and actually the funny thing is, Americans in general don't like to take care of their things. So if it costs more than $500, take care of it. It will last longer and you won't need to replace it as soon. Also, don't be a tech addict. There are many, many more kinds of addictions aside from addictions to drugs and alcohol. Hackers are addicted to buying tech. They just need it. They need that last little thing. If you are one of those people, get help. I'm not being facetious. I'm absolutely serious to you. That's probably an addiction profile, and you need to go to a group counseling session or seek professional help to do it. Make lenders compete for your business. If you can get a 0% interest rate balance transfer credit card and you have balances on your credit cards, get the balance transfer card and transfer all of your balances to it. For most people, there's really no reason to be even paying credit card interest. There are so many options out there, and granted, while they've been reducing over the past couple of years as the credit industry is consolidating and calling in their loans a little bit more, if you can get a 0% interest rate credit card for a fixed amount of time, get it and transfer your balances to it. Even if you end up paying a transaction fee, depending on what the balance is, it comes out to a marginal interest rate expense, which you should also calculate as a part of your financial plan. But I know people who always have $4,000 of credit card balance out there somewhere. And for a decade, they've paid 0% interest on it, because as soon as that 0% introductory interest rate expires, they go out and get a new card and transfer the balance to it. And half the time, when a lending institution sees that you're balance transferring a credit card, they'll say, oh, well, we can extend the introductory rate on the card we just gave you for another 6 months or another year, because we don't want you to close this credit card as soon as you balance transfer the balance out. Another thing that people don't realize, store credit. Now, a warning about store credit, that's credit that you get when they say, oh, hey, if you open a Best Buy account today or if you open a Brooks Brothers account today, we'll give you 10% off your purchase. More often than not, these are a good deal because they usually give you a longer grace period to pay purchases. There's most credit cards out there, the ones that you should be using, give you a 30-day grace period on new purchases, which means they're not charging you interest on whatever it is that you bought for 30 days. If you have a credit card that's charging you interest the moment that the transaction clears, tear it up and get a new credit card. There's no reason you should be using credit instruments that don't have some kind of grace period on them. And the warning about store credit is that sometimes it's a good deal, sometimes it's a really bad deal. Know what the grace period is. Know what the interest percentage is on it. You shouldn't really ever be paying interest on a store account unless you absolutely needed to buy it and it's for a legitimate business reason. Always figure out what the interest rate is. The interest rate should always be in bold print in the largest font size that's not a headline on the sheet of paper. It should always be there. If it's not there, if you can't see it on the piece of paper that you're signing to open the account, don't open the account because it's a scam. And if store credit gives you, more than a 30-day grace period and the interest rate is, anywhere between 12 and maybe 17% on the outside, it's usually a good deal. If the grace period on balances is less than 30 days or doesn't exist, and the interest rate is more than 17%, it's a bad deal. Dell, I'm going to call out Dell on this one. Dell Financial Solutions, which is the credit arm that's separate from Dell. When you go buy a Dell computer, they say, oh, put it on a Dell credit card and we'll give you a certain percent off. 8 out of the 10 times that I see this, it's a ripoff because they're charging you 23 to 25%, and they start charging the day that you buy the item. Don't do that. If you don't know what I'm talking about, find somebody who does, and they'll explain it to you. Also, it doesn't matter what it is, unless it's an American Express Black card or an American Express Platinum card, you should never pay an annual fee. And the only reason, does anyone in here know what an American Express Black card is? Oh, wow, okay, cool. For those of you who don't know, an American Express Black card is a very, very special kind of credit card that American Express will generally only offer to people who are millionaires or who have had a very, very long, good track record with an American Express Gold or Platinum card. It is the only credit card, only major credit card, that you can transfer to somebody else by making a phone call. It's the only credit card that really does not have a preset spending limit. If you have an American Express Black card, you can buy a jet airplane. I'm not kidding you, because there are Saudi sheiks who have bought jet airplanes from, what's up? Okay, there are Saudi sheiks who have bought jet airplanes on an American Express Black card. Seth, did you have a question?
Isn't it not a credit card but a charge card?
Hmm?
Isn't it not a credit card but
Oh.
a charge card?
Actually, that depends on the agreement that you sign with American Express.
Right,
Because
okay.
every American Express Black card, for the most part, is an individually negotiated financial transaction, financial instrument. That's why, yes, it's not even a traditional credit card. But, and Seth raises a good point. There are two kinds of cards out there: charge cards, which basically charge you interest for the outstanding balance, credit cards offer you a line of credit, and they say you can have a credit line of such and such an amount. A charge card means in 30 days you will pay us the money, or we take you to court. That's the two differences between a charge card and a credit card. But you don't really see charge cards out there too much because it's so much better for the financial institutions to just milk you for that interest over and over and over again. About annual fees. I have 2 Capital One credit cards. Capital One is notorious for charging really bad annual fees on their cards. I've had these 2 Capital One cards for 5 years. I have never paid an annual fee on them because every year when that annual fee charge shows up, I call them and I say, cancel my Capital One credit card, or cancel my Capital One credit card. And they ask, well, why? And I say, I don't like the annual fee. Oh, well, we'll waive the annual fee if you keep us as a customer. Okay, great, thank you, bye. I'm serious, it's that easy. It's actually automated now. They actually say that like option 1 or 2 is like, are you calling to cancel your Capital One credit card because you don't like the annual fee? The annual fee, press 1. Beep. Well, we're going to waive the annual fee on your credit card. I'm absolutely serious. Most credit cards work like this. How much time do I have? 30? So I'm half done? Okay. Yeah, just yell it out because I might not be looking right at you. Also, now this depends on your individual credit history, of course, but you should never pay more than 15% annual interest on your credit cards. That's just generally a rule of thumb. If nobody out there will offer you a credit card at 15%, now 15.99% or less, you can't use credit cards, you don't know how to use them, you don't have a good enough credit history, do something else. Pay off your credit balances. Now, a lot of people say, oh, credit cards are a bad thing, credit cards are so awful, yada, yada. No, a credit card is a tool like anything else. A hammer can be used to pound a nail into a board, a hammer can be used to bash somebody's skull in. Credit cards are exactly the same thing. They're a tool. There's some people who don't know how to use the tools. If you don't know how to use the tool, don't use it. Do something else. If you can't keep your balances to half of what your credit line is, which basically means if you have a $2,000 credit limit and your average annual balance is more than $1,000, you are probably a credit addict and you need to stop using credit cards. This is the general rule of thumb. And also, if you're looking to buy a house sometime in the next 5 years, because of the way credit scoring works, you should usually be at or around half of what your balance is on all your financial instruments, because that will give you generally a better credit score and thus a lower mortgage interest rate. But the way credit scores are calculated is a patented algorithm that nobody knows, and people have been trying to hack for many, many years. And every time they think they've got it just hacked, Fair Isaac goes out and changes the formula based on information that they've accumulated from all of the millions and millions of credit card consumers and getting better data, and they have to start the whole process of hacking what a credit score means all over again. But that's generally a good rule of thumb if you're looking to buy a house. Also, if you have points, rewards programs, different things like that, and you have the available money, use your credit card to buy it. If you can pay for your car in cash and you fly a lot or you want a vacation and you can possibly put that car on a points credit card, put the car on a points credit card and pay off the car 28 days after the charge, because they will give you the points and you might get a free vacation for buying a car. Also, this is the one thing that gets everybody. Unless you can explain your benefits, compensation, and insurance package better than the HR person, and you know that, go see your HR person and talk about it. Most people that offer a benefits package will keep you on the clock for you going to HR and talking about it, so there's really no excuse not to go to talk to HR and understand what everything that your compensation package is. Know your insurance needs. Hackers generally always overinsure their cars or pay too much money for car insurance. Don't trust the ads. Even though they say, oh, well, we'll give you quotes from 2 other people that offer car insurance, and if they're less, no. Go to every single website that's out there when you're buying car insurance. Figure out, and that's the thing, there's no consistent pattern for car insurance. There's nobody that's consistently the cheapest. Progressive and Geico are maybe 25% of the time, depending on what a given circumstance is, are the cheapest, but car insurance is another complicated thing, just like credit scoring. Go out there, talk to State Farm, talk to AAA, call these people. Even if you spend 5-6 hours, unless you're making $40 an hour, you will make money in the end on the transaction on your car insurance. Every time your car insurance comes up for renewal, go price it out somewhere else. Know your available options. One of the things, hackers who are poor and broke and unemployed generally hate taking unemployment because they think it's welfare, and I don't need support from the state. If your unemployment insurance, you pay for that. They take it out of your check wherever you work. You paid for it. If you're broke and unemployed and were laid off, go get unemployment insurance. Even if you get a job 2 weeks later, you'll still get that check that you are paying for every single time you get paid. It's just a good way to get it back. There's no reason not to take unemployment if you're eligible for it. Medicare. If you're not making that much money and are eligible for Medicare, take it. If you're eligible for SSA benefits, take them. It is not a bad thing, because if you have ever worked a day in your life, you have put money into these government programs. You should take that back out while you still can. All right? Social Security that's coming out of your check every single week, there's no guarantee you're going to get that when you retire. You're probably going to get a lot less. If you can take a government program and you have worked a day in your life, take the government program. If you've never worked a day in your life and you're on government programs and you're not severely disabled, either mentally or physically, I was almost going to use a swear word there. You are a worthless human being. And this deserves its own slide. If you don't take away anything else from this presentation, always, always, always max out your matching retirement contribution. This is free money. Now, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, most employers that offer a benefits package will offer a 401k, a retirement account. And they'll say, well, if you take $10, $20, $100 out of your check and put it towards the retirement account, we will match that. Always max out that contribution, because it's free money and most of you aren't taking it. Take the free money. Take the free money. Take the free money. Always match out your matching retirement contribution, because it's free money, and and another thing is it's earning interest. It's earning returns from the day you put it in there. Always max out this contribution. Also, another thing that hackers are notoriously bad at, getting paid what they deserve. Hackers are usually pwned by their managers the day that salary negotiation comes up. They're usually pwned by people upon hiring. Figure out what people who do what you do in the area that you do it, figure out what they make. This is not hard. There are at least 20 websites out there that will tell you or give you an estimate of what people in your field doing your specific job function, what they're making, what people are paying out there. Once you have good data on what other people are making out there, and it's time for your salary negotiation at the end of the year, it's time for you to get hired, demand more than what the average is because you're worth it. Always go into salary negotiations and ask for 150% of what you think you're worth. The funny thing is, 1 out of every 3 times, they're just going to give it to you. Because anybody who has the balls to go in and talk with a manager and say, yeah, I'm worth X amount of dollars, they'll usually say, oh, well, that person's really confident in what they do, so they're probably a really good employee. We don't want to lose them, so we're going to pay them that. Seriously, your next salary negotiation, just try that. Hackers always cower before managers when it comes to salary negotiations. There is no reason for this. Ask for 150% because the worst thing they can do is say no. And you start negotiating from there. Always be able to justify 100% of what you ask for. 100% of what you think you're worth. If you think you're worth more than all of the other people out there that are doing your jobs and your company wants to pay you less, start looking for a new job. Unless you really, really like the culture of the company that you're in, unless you really, really like the people that you work with, unless you really, really don't want to lose that job, go out there and get paid more money because most hackers don't like where they work. And actually, if you like the people that you work with, if you like the people who manage you, if you like the culture of your company, you probably never want to leave it. But that's still no excuse to not go in and ask for 1.5 times what you're worth at salary negotiation times. Because if you have a company that meets all 3 of those things, they're probably going to pay you that anyway. And this is real money that we're talking about. In a 5-minute conversation, you can double what you make in a year. Also, a lot of hackers are independent contractors. And a lot of independent contractors will go out there and seek business at half of what it's worth just so that they can get the business. If you've been an independent contractor for more than a year and you're charging what you charged when you first started out, you are an idiot. Or you're not doing your job very well and you can't get the business. The more that you've been in and out there as an independent contractor, you should be charging the same or twice as much as the other people who are out there charging who don't know how to do their jobs and get away with charging it. Seriously, people who come to HackerCons are usually really good at what they do and they charge too little for it if they're an independent contractor. Always go out there and demand more. You're worth it. Have a spine. And of course, I can't say this enough, seek out adequate professionals to start helping you. The time to figure out tax credits and different things that you can write off in your taxes is January 1 of the tax year you start paying taxes, not April 13th. All right? If you go talk to a CPA and you say, basically tell them everything about your life and all the different things that you're doing, if you're itemizing, if you're just out there in a wage earner and your taxes are, okay, well, this is what I made, I didn't make anything else, and I'm making generally less than $40,000 a year, you probably don't need a CPA to do taxes. You can probably do it in TurboTax. If you're not that person, find a CPA to do your taxes and have a long conversation with them. There are hundreds of independent CPAs out there in the town that you're in. Don't go to H&R Block. Don't go to Jackson Hewitt. Don't go to one of those shops that's only open for 4 months out of the year. Find an independent CPA because they'll usually charge less and give you much better service. And if they know you and they work with you, they can help you. Seth.
What do you think is a reasonable price for getting a CPA to do taxes?
Seth's question was, what do you think is a reasonable price to get a CPA to do your taxes for you? That depends entirely on where you live and what your tax situation is. If you were that $30,000 wage earner that's not going to itemize that the standard deduction is always more than what you give to charity or all the other various different things you can write off when you itemize, you can probably do your taxes in TurboTax. And actually, the funny thing is, TurboTax used to be the best deal out there. If you're just that wage earner, there are many, 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 many free e-file options out there. I mean, absolutely free. They don't charge you to direct deposit your refund. They don't charge you to prepare your return. They don't charge you to prepare your state return if you live in a state that charges state income tax. If you're just that average wage earner with no special tax things that are out there, and you're not having a side business, you're not giving more than $2,000 to charity, and you don't have kids, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, find the free e-file thing and file your taxes before March 1st, because all of those free services start charging after March 1st because most people do their taxes after March 1st. But if you're not that wage earner, find a CPA to do your taxes and talk with them. Make sure they know everything that you're doing, because if your CPA doesn't know everything that you're doing, the CPA can't tell you what credits are out there. They have to know every little thing that has any financial consequence out there. And if they're a good CPA, they'll sit there, they'll listen, they'll take notes and say, oh, well, you're doing X such and such. Well, you're eligible for that credit. Oh, well, you're eligible for that deduction. Oh, you're eligible for this, that, and the other. Work with a CPA. The guys at TurboTax and the guys at those shops that are open 4 months, not a year, want you in the door, want to ask you a bunch of questions, want to get you out the door, and charge you $200 for talking to you for half an hour. Also, if you're making more than $50,000 a year or you're approaching retirement, and by approaching retirement, I mean that means you're older than 35. If you're older than 30 and you haven't started saving for retirement, start saving for retirement now. I'm absolutely serious about this. Most of the people in this room, I'd say, I guess the median age in the room is like 26, 27. You know, you've got other priorities. You're trying to date people, that sort of thing. Okay, fine. You can postpone. I recommend that you save for retirement anyway. But if you're older than 30, you no longer have an excuse because you're losing money every single day. There's a Louis Ruckhiser thing that's out there. 2 brothers. One started saving for retirement when he was 20. One started saving for retirement when he was 30. The guy who was 20 had the worst luck. He always put his money in the stock market on the worst day of the year. Every single year he retired until he hit retirement at 62. The brother who was 30, who started saving for retirement when he was 30, was the luckiest guy every single year. He put in money on the best day, like the price when everything was lowest on the stock market and always appreciated in value, and was just the statistically luckiest possible investor out there. When the 2 brothers retired, who had more money? The 20-year-old. The 20-year-old had not only more money, but twice as much money as the 30-year-old. The earlier you can start saving for retirement, the better, because it means that you're getting paid for that money. Like, investments are when you give your money to someone and they pay you for the use of that money. The earlier that you can invest, the better, because you will end up making more money over the long term, and you will be getting paid on what they're paying you to do that. Compound interest. Albert Einstein said the most powerful force in the universe is compound interest, which is the money that the interest that they paid you, the interest that you're making on the interest that they paid you. Seth.
Does that include matching contributions?
He said, does that include matching contributions? Yes, absolutely that includes matching contributions. The day that you start working for a firm where you can get matching contributions, walk in there, that should be part of your salary negotiations. Like, don't even think about that other money that you're making. You know, even though, you know, the other people in your office have fancier cars, fancier computers, better suits, whatever it is. Actually, you should probably be getting better suits than them, but that's aside from the point. You will be somebody at the end who doesn't have to rely on their children to support them. Okay? A lot of the retirees I see, you know, that I'll go with when I was doing my CPA internship and the retirees came in, they'd be talking about, oh, all the wonderful things that they did in their 20s, 30s, 40s, all the wonderful vacations that they took with their children, and all these other things like that, and now their children are supporting them. There's generally no more humiliating experience that is drawn out over time than asking your children to support you for 30 years. It's humiliating when your paycheck has to come from your parents. I mean, it has to come from your children. It's not so humiliating when it's from your parents, because that's their job. And actually, this leads into another thing that's not in my slide. If you can live with your parents, as in, you know, if you can be in a functional living arrangement with your parents, live with your parents. Don't pay rent. You know, there's no, like, having a shame of having to live with your parents. I mean, okay, here's the things. Depending on where you live, what's your rent payment? What's the shame in living with your parents? Is the shame of living with your parents worth that much more a month? No, it's not. It never is. And if it is for you, you need professional help. Now, granted, I know there are some people who have a certain relationship with their parents that if they spend more than an hour with them in the same, general vicinity, they kill each other. Okay, fine, yeah, don't live with your parents. Okay, if you can't live with your parents for, emotional reasons or psychological reasons, fine. Don't live with your parents. But if you can establish a good living arrangement with your parents, even if they ask you to be, in by a certain time or something like that, if you're over 20, if you're not 18 anymore, you can usually bend the rules a little bit. They will usually respect you. And if not, then you probably shouldn't be living with your parents. But rent, I hate paying rent. Every time I sign that rent check because I can't live with my parents because I'm engaged now, I just get, All right. And then finally, grow up. Half of the hackers who I work with on their finances are doing one of these three things. Don't spend money for the sole purpose of impressing people that you want to sleep with. Okay? If you're buying cars, suits, big, gigantic, fancy dinners, if you're spending money just to impress somebody that you want to sleep with, stop. If you can't stop, seek professional help. I'm absolutely serious. You think I'm being facetious. You think this is a big joke. But no, these are serious problems people have. These are psychological disorders that have been classified as psychological disorders. You probably need to go on Zoloft if you're wasting money trying to impress people you want to sleep with.
Does that mean you need to get a divorce now? Should you get a divorce now?
No, my fiance's Dutch. She loves the fact that I'm cheap. Okay, and here's the even worse thing. Stop. Okay, well, I'm going to take back that cheap part. I buy expensive suits. And the reason I buy expensive suits is because people in the industry that I work with recognize the difference between a cheap suit and an expensive suit. They know. Most of the people in this room will probably never understand how they know or why they know or how I know what a cheap suit is and what an expensive suit is. Granted, it took me a while to figure this out, but that is a legitimate business investment. And 9 times out of 10, when you walk into some place wearing a suit, just because of what you're wearing, people will take you more seriously and pay you more money. I mean, you have to be thinking about different things like that. Granted, hackers generally, wearing a suit, and then they know, okay, well, why is this guy wearing a suit to an interview to be a network admin when he knows that everybody in this company wears to work, coming to work in hacker shirts and torn jeans? If that's the case, you probably don't need to buy an expensive suit. But if where you work, there are more than 3 people out of every 10 people who are working there that are wearing suits, always go into salary negotiations, always go into interviews, always go into other things wearing an expensive suit because they will start taking you seriously. But anyway, getting back to the slide. Stop subsidizing people you want to sleep with. And by that, I mean giving them money. If there's a friend of yours who is of the gender that you want to sleep with, and you are giving them money, and they are able to work, and it's being that they don't have a very serious mental problem or they don't have limbs, don't subsidize them. All right, there's this guy, somebody who I've worked with who makes $500 a week. I mean, he takes home $500 a week. Every week, he writes a $200 check to his best friend that's been his best friend for ever since we were in high school, and all this stuff. And I keep telling him, you need help. You have a psychological dependency disorder, and you need to seek help. Oh, but she's been my best friend forever, and you're just a CPA, you're not an accountant, or you're just a CPA, you're not a psychologist. And you're right, I'm not a psychologist, but I can recognize that you need help. It's not that hard. All right, these are warning signs that are as obvious as somebody who cannot spend a night of their lives sober. I'm absolutely serious about this. If you are writing checks to people that are of the gender that you want to sleep with, and No reason for it. If you're not marrying them, if you're not sleeping with them, if you're sleeping with them, fine, that's okay. All right? Probably not. Another thing, stop subsidizing members of your immediate family if they have the capability to work. Again, if they have all of their, if they have limbs, if they can get around in a wheelchair, they can probably go out there and get a job, unless they have a severe mental disorder. There is no reason to subsidize them. Absolutely none. If they can go out and get a job. Now, granted, if your parents are retired, they didn't save for retirement, and you don't want them to be a greeter at Walmart, fine, write your parents a check. That's fine. But if they can work, don't subsidize them. Hackers are suckers when it comes to money. You think I'm kidding, but I honestly, the only people, there are two kinds of people that are worse than hackers when it comes to just giving money to people, and that's alcoholics and gambling addicts. Hackers are number 3. I don't know why that is, but it's true. Because I've done taxes for alcoholics and gambling addicts. And hackers. Hackers are number 3 on that list of people who do dumb things with their money. If you can't stop doing these things, if you know you're writing that check every week, and you know it's wrong, and you know you're being played, seek professional help. I can't believe I've said that so many times this presentation. All right, and just because I have to do this, if you missed it the first time, I am not a CPA, I'm not an attorney, I probably should have said I'm not a psychologist. A speech at a HackerCon is not a substitute for professional advice. Nothing except professional advice is a substitute for professional advice. All right, nobody from the con has asked me to go next door and start running the hacker karaoke thing yet, so I'm going to take questions. Seth.
Are you a CPA?
Okay. No, I'm not a CPA, and actually that's a very interesting question because I've applied to take the CPA exam twice, and I've been rejected on technicalities twice. My undergrad was in social science. The way back, black shirt in the way back of the room.
You didn't go into it at all, but what about hacker expenses that if they miss on itemizing on their taxes?
The question was, what about hacker items that they miss on itemizing expenses on your taxes? That's why you talk with a CPA. That's why you tell them everything that you're doing. If it's something that you do for your work or something that you do as a side project, if it's something that you do in the hopes of achieving some kind of financial return in the future, you can write it off as a business expense. If you're donating, and here's the other thing, if you're donating a lot of money to, the Hacker Foundation, you can write that off on your taxes. All right, where's the microphone? Okay, question right here. Make sure that the person who has the microphone in their hand comes by you if you want a question, because I'm just going to go on whoever has the microphone.
Actually, this is the last question anyways.
Oh, is there a talk after
Great.
this?
No, actually, we could probably keep going.
Okay, yeah, they haven't asked me to go next. I'm supposed to go next door and do a game show, but nobody's pulled me in there yet, so.
Yeah, it will be in about half.
dinner.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Is there a better way of establishing a good credit history without credit cards?
Yes. Actually, thank you for bringing that up. Most banks will offer something that's called a credit builder loan. Basically what it is you go to a bank, say, I'm interested in building up some credit, I'd like to do a credit builder loan, which basically means they'll loan, quote unquote, you $1,000, but you can't touch that money. They'll put it in a CD that you can absolutely not touch until you've paid off that loan. And every month you pay that loan off, you might be paying 6 or 7% on the loan, and it might be invested in a 3% interest-bearing thing. So you're paying 3% interest, you're paying $30 over the course of a year to get better credit, which is probably a good deal. It's called a credit builder loan, and if you pay it every month, at the end of it, they give you the CD and all that money with interest. You don't have to use credit cards to get a good credit history.
They're not charging you interest on your money, are they?
Well, they charge you a net interest rate because they're putting in an interest-bearing CD, and they're charging you probably twice or 3 times as much as what that CD is, which is what, but that's what I said. Right. Well, no, you're not losing money because you're paying to get a better credit score.
Yeah, you're just paying the interest to get the credit. And then you take the loan money and you use that for a secured credit card, and then you
Right.
go around.
That's actually another good thing, but usually it's called a secured credit card, which basically means that you're giving the bank like $500 to have a $500 limit on a credit card, and if you don't pay it, they take it. They take that whole thing out of it. If you're not paying it every month, you're not paying it on time. Those are generally bad deals. I'm not saying that there isn't a good secured credit card deal out there, but generally they're charging you monthly fees, which just eat away over time. Fees are where banks and lending institutions make their money. Every time they charge you a fee, it's usually a bad deal unless you bounced a check. And if you bounced a check, you're a moron. Okay, next question, the microphone over there. Yep.
Will your slides be up on your personal website or something?
The question,
Will your slides be viewable on any website?
yes, I will put them on NICFAR, NICKFARR.org, or I'll put them in some form of, they might not be PowerPoint slides because I think PowerPoint slides are a bad way of giving information to somebody who just wants to read it. I will put it in a wiki which will be linkable off of nickfar.org, which I know I haven't changed in 3 years. I will change it in 2 weeks. Okay. Yep.
You had mentioned that to cancel a credit card if they wouldn't like lower your interest rates or waive the fee or that sort of thing. I had heard that if you close a credit card account, that actually reduces your credit score because it's a net loss of how much money you can borrow.
That's negligible because anytime you cancel a credit card, like credit card companies will pull your credit report every 3 months or so. And if they see that you've closed a credit card, they'll say, oh, well, they paid off the balance. They had a responsible history with that card. Why did they close it? Maybe it's because the deal wasn't good enough. Let's offer them a better deal. Yes, it does have, if you're constantly going from credit card to credit card to credit card like that, it has a negligible negative effect on your credit score. But it's usually, I mean, this is something where you have to have had over, more than 10 credit cards, more than 10 credit cards and switched them all every year. It's such a negligible impact on your credit score that if you're paying all those balances responsibly and seeking a good deal, it lowers your credit score only because your credit history indicates that you're a smart consumer. And smart consumers are generally, they don't really want to offer less profitable, exactly. Smart consumers are less profitable, which is why it has a net negative impact on your credit score. But if you've been, now here's another thing. Let's say that you got laid off for 3 months, you didn't have the money, and you missed payments for 3 months on that card. And you eventually paid it off, balance transferred it, whatever. That will lower your credit score much, much more. Over the life of a credit card companies will usually let you get away with 1 missed payment a year. Anything more than that, that's when they start tacking on fees and they bump. Here's the thing. My fiance, are we off tape right now?
She's a wonderful person.
My fiance's best friend. Missed her credit card payment, just paid it late because she didn't realize when it was due twice in a row. Her interest rate went from 13.99% to 28.5%, which I believe is the statutory limit in the state of Michigan. That is an interest rate that is illegal in 10 out of the 50 states for missing her credit card payment twice. And they're doing that a lot more now because a lot more people are defaulting on their credit cards. Anytime there's any warning flag like that, they're going to try to get as much money out of you as possible before you go broke, before you declare bankruptcy. Oh, and here's another thing. People who declare bankruptcy, they say, why, I thought after I declared bankruptcy, I'd stop getting all these credit card offers, but now I'm getting 3 times as many credit card offers. Because after you sign an application for a credit card, after you've declared bankruptcy, they can go after you and anything you own for that, with certain statutory limits depending on what state you live in. By the way, if you're really bad at managing credit, go move to Massachusetts. I'm absolutely serious. I mean, because credit card companies make almost no money in Massachusetts. I'm sure they're making some money, but the laws there are so labyrinthian for them, And that's another funny thing is know what the laws regarding credit are in your state. Because there are many credit card companies are national institutions and are generally not really great at keeping track of what the laws are in 50 states, which is why they all get sued in a class action lawsuit 3 times a year, every year. Because they're counting on you to not notice the agreement or not know the law. If you don't know the law, and you don't think you can know the law, if you don't know what everything absolutely means with certainty, and that applies to probably 99% of the people at this conference, which means there are probably 3 people here who understand it, go talk to a certified financial planner, bring your agreements, bring your credit card statements. Oh, and another thing I forgot to mention, save everything. Save all your receipts. There are many, many people out there, especially if you eat out a lot or do a lot of things for business like that, and then there's a tip line right there. Do you know how easy it is to make an 8 out of a 3 on a credit card receipt? And do you know how many people notice that? Do you know why Russian credit card hackers will not charge $100 on your account? They'll charge $5. It's because it's a random $5 charge to a name you don't recognize. Well, it's $5. I don't care about it. I'm not going to contest it. That's how they make their money. Always know exactly where it is. Save all your receipts. Know that the amount is exactly correct, because otherwise they will nickel and dime you to hell, and you're a sucker, and hackers are suckers. Okay, next question.
You mentioned that renting is bad, and I'm a renter, and I don't like it. What are your suggestions about buying a house? What should you look out for?
Okay, buying a house is beyond the scope of what I can talk to you about because of granted, it's changing. In a lot of markets now, depending on where you live, and this is very dependent on where you live, it's changing. And actually, for as much as I hate paying rent, I hate paying rent because I live in a place where I can go buy a starter home for $50,000. The only problem is, now granted, there are places in New York where you can't buy literally, there are residences in New York where you can't buy a square foot for $50,000. And I'm talking about like a home that's not a trailer on a yard in a place where the gunshots are heard only 2 or 3 times a year for $50,000. I could go live in Cracksville, and and that's the funny thing. There are houses where I live that you can buy for $1, and they want you to buy that because the city will start charging you property taxes. You're legally obligated to fix it up, to mow the lawn, to repair the fences, to make it look like the house is not a crack house, which is why you can go out there and buy a house for $1. If you're really good at building stuff and you don't mind getting shot at, go out there and buy a house for $1, because you will make your money on the investment. But as far as buying houses and when it's time to move, let me put it to you this way. If you're making 150% of what the poverty line is in your town, now granted, what the poverty line is, what the federal poverty line is in New York, makes you the richest man in town in Kentucky. These are all things that are very dependent upon where you live. Talk to a certified financial planner. Talk to people who rent. Talk to people who own houses. Talk to professionals. Only then can you make an educated, informed decision on whether or not it's good to buy a house or rent. Now, here's the other thing. When you buy a house, you're still paying a large portion of rent to the mortgage company. And that's the other thing, is that sometimes buying a house, you can lose a lot of money on. And actually, the New York Times, in their most recent article discussing this point, said, in most major metropolitan areas these days, it's usually better to rent because you're going to end up paying the man less. So that's something that really depends on what your area is. They used to be able to say that buying a house is always a good investment, but the mortgage market, the real estate market, all of that is so beeped up right now. Don't do it. Next question. Oh, Alonka. Oh, no, I'm in trouble.
No, I don't know if you've seen it yet, but there's a documentary in the theaters right now called Maxed Out.
Yes,
I recommend
yes,
to everyone
yes,
in this room. And
yes.
it goes into what you were talking about with the corporate conspiracies. And it actually shows that the credit card companies are targeting college students, and they're targeting people who are going to hold balances for the rest of their lives because it's a huge profit center.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing, is that college students usually grow out of it. Hackers don't. And that's the funny thing is that I often, and that's another funny thing is that I've actually, I've helped my friends with taxes for years. Before I decided to pursue CPA and go through this, and have helped them with it. And I've noticed that when hackers get married, usually whoever they marry takes over the finances and they start cleaning up. And I think I'm about to get cut off because I see Tiger in the back of the room, so I think I'll take the last question if I can, and it's not Seth. I don't care. The guy in the hat. Wait, is there anybody on this side of the room that had a question? I haven't seen a question from you guys all the...
We don't know how to handle our credit.
Okay. All right. Last question.
What's a good way to find a CPA? It doesn't seem like a phone book.
AICPA.org.
Okay.
And actually like it's either the AICPA.org or whatever your state's association of CPAs is, or just look in the phone book. Call them up. Say, what would you charge to do my taxes? Give them a brief thing and shop around. Always make sure it's an independent CPA. Like if it's John Q. Law CPA, they're probably cheaper than Law and whoever CPAs. Always look for the independent guy because he's the hungriest. Because he decided that he wanted a family life, but he still has to make a living. So he's hungry and he'll probably charge you less. Also, young CPAs that are just starting out are usually really good because they'll usually charge old clients the same thing year after year after year after year. But anyway, I've got to go. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'll be at the concert. Thank you.
Check. More. Check. Just a reminder to everybody, we have caught up on all the DVDs, so if anybody's interested in purchasing any of the lectures, they're right out on the table here, 15 apiece, 10 for $100.